And how do you guard against that enrichment factor, that perhaps at this point we're seeing that transfer of wealth into just a few black hands?
Yes, that is also happening, but I think that what we need to do is look, I do not think that should have a dogmatic hate for enrichment. In fact, I don't think we should be dogmatic about anything. And that enrichment will happen in the process, and there is very little that we can do about it. So I would be loath to say black people should not be rich. But at the same time, we have to balance this against authenticity, which I think is a very strong characteristic of that is required of people who are going to lead an economy. We need to be authentic. We need to be trustworthy. We need to conduct ourselves in a manner that shows where we come from, in a manner that shows that we have a responsibility to a whole people that is still suffering under the yoke of poverty and so on. So we have to be sensitive to our environment and to be authentic and not forget where we come from.
Coming back to the wealth accumulating in a few black hands, do you think that that is a reality? Is it a problem in South Africa?
Well, there are a few, not enough. I mean, in South Africa, you have a few wealthy black people, but you have much more wealthy white people. And so sometimes people don't look at it in that context. And so it is inevitable that with the type of economy that we have opted for, which is I wouldn't say capitalist and I wouldn't say socialist, which is a dogmatic that reflects that has a role for capital to play. Some people would become rich, and in this instance, because of old capital, you have a lot of white people that are still very rich. You have some black people that are emerging that are rich. I do not think that that is a problem per se. The problem is if we are not authentic and if we forget where we come from.
On the corporate governance issue, how many non-executive directorships do you think one individual can hold?
It shouldn't be too much. I know that there are extremes where people hold up to 50, 40, 50. I don't know to what extent that is practical even. On the other hand, there are people whose skills are just being directors and who just want to offer their services by serving on boards of companies.
But 40 or 50, I mean, that sounds ludicrous.
Yes, no, 40 or 50 is out of line, I think.
Do you think we're going to see the situation changing?
Yeah, I think that codes such as King Code on corporate governance should discourage that. That should place a limit on how many boards a person can possibly sit, balancing this against the need to give justice to what you have to do.
2008 was a dramatic time for equity markets globally, and obviously the South African bourse followed suit. How did you feel when you saw money being wiped off the board on a daily basis?
A bit nervous when you're sitting on about between 3 and 400 billion in equities. But fortunately, because we do not have an exposure to international equities, we only had an exposure to South African equities. The knock was not as bad, and in fact, our assets under management in the year up to the 31st of March 2009 dropped by only 6%. Which I think that was a very good performance relative to where the rest of the industry ended up.
You make the statement that assets under management dropped by 6% over that to March the 31st, 2009. A business report article came out quite soon after that saying that Brian Molefe, CEO of the PIC, increased 11% annual increase with assets under management falling 6%. How do you feel when you read something like that and you know that somebody like Jacko Marie earns 3 times what you do at Standard Bank?
Yeah, I think it was a bit below the belt, because in fact that 11% increase was inflation linked. And that was about the inflation during that time. That was also a year in which inflation was very high. So if you look at the real increase, I would say it was about 1% or so.
Do you feel the need to defend yourself when you see journalists making assumptions like that and you know that it's actually incorrect?
No, you see, the important thing for me is that a lot of people will make accusations, a lot of people will say a lot of things. But if you're authentic and truthful to yourself, you can go to bed, because you know that if it's not true, it's not true. So you don't have to worry about it. I think people have a problem with sleep when such accusations are true, when in fact they know that they have done something wrong. So relative to how the market performed, I think we did very well, and an 11% increase was in line with inflation, and that's enough for me to count my sheep and go to bed.